gentlemen, I think we're getting ready to start this meeting. It is 6 o'clock, and I'm gonna call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Today is July the 16th of 2020. First item that we have is a roll call, please.
Yes, if we could, though, could we just wait for PAC to broadcast the meeting? I'm still showing them not broadcasting the meeting, so we.
All right, then we'll just hang on for a second.
Okay, there we go. They're ready.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Vidauri.
Very well. Erasmo Villarreal, Chairperson. Jorge Dominguez. Commissioner Jorge Dominguez.
Here.
Commissioner Rafael Dueñas.
Present.
Commissioner Abraham Lugo.
Present.
Commissioner Johnny Narvaez. Commissioner Johnny Narvaez.
Present.
Commissioner Guillermo Raúl Ugalde. Commissioner George Beckelheimer.
Present.
Commissioner Carlos Flores. Commissioner Carlos Flores.
Hello, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Present.
Thank you. And lastly, Jose Salvador Tellez, Commissioner Tellez.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you do have quorum.
Thank you very much. The next item that we have is a consideration of the approval of the minutes of July the 2nd, 2020. Does anybody, I take it you all read the meetings. Does anybody have any corrections or any additions? And if not, we need a motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes of July 2nd, 2020.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. The next item that we have is the public hearings. Item A, this is the amending of the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo.
Excuse me, Commissioner Villarreal.
Yes.
Citizens' comments is the next section, and as you recall, it does take about 30 seconds.
My goodness, I skipped it. In such a hurry here. I apologize. I'm sorry. The next item is citizens' comments. Do we have anybody on the line who wishes to address the commission?
Our staff will notify if someone joins in, and if we can give it about 30 seconds due to the lag, we'll wait and see if anybody calls in. While we're waiting, just a reminder to the commissioners, if you're not speaking, if you can mute your mic, really helps with the feedback. And also something to consider, Commissioner Villarreal, if you would like, you can ask for any opposed, and then if no one answers opposed, then the assumption is.
That's a very good idea. Commission members, what we're going to do here when we're doing a motion from now on, I am going to ask if anybody's opposing the motion. If anybody signifies that there is no opposition to the motion, I am going to just go ahead and say that the motion has been approved, rather than do it the opposite way, asking for a motion for approval and then asking for anybody to deny. So we're going to do it a little bit in reverse. I think it'll be a lot easier to understand for everybody. If you're all in agreement with that, is the commissioners in agreement with that?
Yes. Yes, Ugalde.
Beckelheimer, okay.
Yes, Narvaez. Dominguez, I'm okay.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Anybody on the line, Kirby?
No, sir.
All right, then we're going to move on to the next item. This is number 5, public hearings. And the first one that we have is amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning Lot 8A, Block 1058, Eastern Division, located at 3119 South Buena Vista Avenue from R3, which is a mixed residential district, to B1 limited business district. This is a public hearing. And Kirby, who is going to make the presentation?
I'll make the presentations for the zoning cases tonight. The proposed use for this zoning case is a vehicle holding yard and salvage yard. It's located on the south side of the city. Here is an aerial view. Here is a view of the zoning as it is currently zoned R3, across the street from some B3 zoning. Here is a view of the future land use designation that designates this area as high-density residential. Here's a street view of the property. Staff supports the proposed zone change for a few reasons. Although it's not in conformance with the future land use map, it does have pre-existing use here, and the zoning, the lot does comply with the requirements for the B1. Now, if you approve this, they will still need to get a conditional use permit for the use that they're proposing, and they will have to come back for that to make sure they can be legal conforming with the use that they want to do. And here's the proposed motion. And when you want to open the public hearing, we can.
First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a question on vehicle holding. I see. Yeah, leave that picture there, please. The vehicle holding, that one. Now, I'm not sure what this is. Is this, because you also said salvage. And if there's salvage involved, do you know, or can you elaborate a little bit on what's what?
I believe our staff is getting the applicant on the line.
All right.
If you would like to ask the applicant, but may I suggest we open the public hearing, that way if anybody calls in while we're.
We have opened the public hearing. I did open.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
good afternoon. This is Rafael Vidaurri. We do have Ms. Madrigal available for any questions.
All right. Ms. Madrigal. Ms. Madrigal.
Si escucha la comisión, Ms. Madrigal.
Sí, la escucho lejos, pero sí la escucho. De hecho, la escuchaba mejor si estaba en la línea, directamente en la sala.
Okay, Ralph, just ask her the question of what is the difference? I mean, what is she planning to do? I mean, it says that it's a holding yard and a salvage yard, and if it's a salvage yard, what are they salvaging?
Ms. Madrigal, la pregunta por parte de la comisión es en sí, ¿qué es lo que van a hacer con el terreno? ¿Es un lugar para almacenar carros o desmantelación? ¿Qué es en sí el propósito?
El propósito en sí es un lugar para almacenar carros. Los carros que en este momento están desmantelados se van a retirar de esa locación lo más pronto posible, pero nosotros queremos utilizar ese terreno como almacenamiento de los vehículos que ya no caben en el que tenemos actual, en el negocio actual.
So, Ms. Madrigal is stating that the purpose of this particular lot is to store the lots prior to them being transported to where they are taken apart.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody on the commission have any other questions about this particular zone change?
Soy dueña, Ms. Madrigal. Mi pregunta es, ¿va a tener venta al público? ¿Va a tener venta al público de partes o de coches o...?
Sí, bueno, si se autoriza este permiso, sí tendríamos venta al público. O sea, como vamos a tener carros para venta, igual y los clientes llegan ahí a revisar el vehículo y se haría una venta normal como nuestro negocio.
Lo que no veo, Ms. Madrigal, es estacionamiento para clientes. ¿Cuál sería esa parte? Porque en la calle va a ser molesto para los vecinos.
De hecho, no hay el terreno hay como un campo hacia adentro donde podrían los clientes meterse porque en sí estacionamiento no hay, simplemente en la acera. El local está ubicado en una esquina y pudiera, no sé, en la acera estacionarse, pero si no se puede, podemos ingresar a los clientes hacia dentro del terreno.
A mí me gustaría que nos marcara el estacionamiento de customers, por favor. Gracias, Luis Madrigal. Thank you.
Claro, claro.
Any other commissioners have any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Perhaps I didn't understand the first time around. So this is high density residential. Why is it we'd like to allow a salvage yard with the sale of car parts next to high density residential? This is some clever urban planning, or why would this be something that would be supported by staff?
The designation on the future land use map is high-density residential for this area. It is right next to, adjacent to commercial and mixed use. Now, most of the time, we are going to recommend that we follow our future land use plan. But as you may or may not be aware, the future land use map is in the process of continually being updated, and there are some areas of town where the detail and the planning on what it is currently designated on the future land use map is not maybe what it should be. That combined with the fact that the lot is not being used for residential, it's currently a vacant lot, and they've been using it for this purpose. And we feel that it would be better to have them to comply legally with the requirements of a commercial next to residential, which would mean once they're able to do this, not with this zone change, but with a CUP when they come back, a conditional use permit. That's the last step they need to do this legally. Then they'd be required to screen the yard so that they're not negatively impacting their neighbors. We want to bring people into compliance when we can. And when a use doesn't make sense at all, then we would recommend not having that use there. But given that it's next to commercial and that they've been doing this here, we want to bring them into compliance.
Well, I have the same concern as Mr. Dueñas about parking, because we know what happens that once something's approved, the streets are utilized at the will of the business owner. But Mr. Chairman, I'm curious about your thoughts about this from your experience perspective.
Well, there's two things that I have that the next question I was going to ask is how long has this operation been going on? Kirby, do you know, or have they been cited or what?
I do not have that information. Perhaps the applicant can provide.
Luis Madrigal, la pregunta por parte de la comisión es, ¿cuánto tiempo llevan utilizando este lote con los carros ahí?
Aproximadamente un año.
Y la segunda pregunta es, ¿se le ha dado alguna infracción en ese terreno por el uso?
Justo acabamos de recibir la primera infracción en lo que tenemos, la cual se liquidó en este mismo mes, pero sí tuvimos una infracción de ese local.
Muchas gracias, Ms. Marial. For the commission, they have been using this property for approximately about a year to store those vehicles, and they were issued a citation here recently for the current use.
Okay, thank you.
This is Commissioner Dominguez, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
I had an opportunity to visit the area, and actually what they have in the area, it's dismantle cars. It doesn't look like a storage to me at all. As a matter of fact, I believe that even allowing the zone change at this particular time will affect the whole community. It seemed that there have been some repairs being done on vehicles, and also some of the vehicles have been cannibalized or parts removed. And if they have been doing that for 1 year, it doesn't fall as on any grandfather clause that we might have. I personally oppose any zone change, but I kind of agree with Kirby. If they want to come back and probably ask for a conditional use permit, where they can show, like Mr. Dueñas and George Beckenheimer saying, the correct amount of parking, the right fencing, the distancing between the residential and in the area where they're going to have the parking. I mean, where they're going to have the cars. I noticed that what appeared to be some runoff of oil in their gasoline, and that's not very good for that community. I personally think that even thinking of changing the zone at this particular time is a real bad idea for the community. That's my comment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else in the commission have any questions for the applicant or any other comments?
I have a question for staff.
Yes.
Was there an update on letters received? I don't recall if there was a mention on that.
There were 22 letters sent to neighboring property owners, 0 were for and 0 against.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just add a couple little points. What they're doing here they would not be allowed to do. Well, first of all, let me say that this zone change allows them to get a conditional use permit. You can only get a conditional use permit for the uses in one zone up from where you're currently at. So from the current zoning, which is R3, you would not be able to get a conditional use permit for a use that's in B3. And so to get the use that they want, we would allow them to go to B1, or we'd recommend to go to B1, limited business district, and then they could get a conditional use permit for that specific use. Doing it would not, or getting that conditional use permit would set conditions on how they can run their operations so that parking, there would be screening, there would be parking requirements, there'd be some time of business operation requirements, and then that would allow for enforcement of those. So in other words, we could say, no, the commission could say, recommend not changing at all and remaining in this R3, and then the hope would be that we'd continually have to enforce on this, and then the property would be sold to somebody who'd use it for residential. That would be the alternative.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ugalde. I have a question for staff. I need some clarification.
Go ahead.
Kirby, so if I understand this correctly, so they need to change the zone to a B1 to be able to apply for the conditional use permit. Now, if they apply for the conditional use permit, would it be granted? Just, I mean, what is it that would there be a chance that it would not be granted?
The conditional use permit process is the same as a zone change. They'd have to come to the planning commission for recommendation and then to council for the ultimate decision.
Yeah, but what are the chances of them getting it approved? Like, are they're going to need parking requirements, or are they going to need that? Like, are we going to make them go through the trouble of zone changing and then get it denied on the conditional use permit side?
They would meet all the requirements. Basically, I mean, the parking requirements are moot because it'd be used as a parking lot. So it would all be essentially parking, but they would have to pave it. They would have to screen it so that they're not impacting their neighbors adversely.
Right, but they just said right now they were going to do sales out of the lot.
No, they would not be permitted to sell from this lot. This lot would just allow them to use it for storage.
Okay. Did I hear incorrectly then? Were they not going to use it for sale?
You did not. No, the lady did say that they were planning to sell out of this lot. She did say that.
Well, that would not be permitted. That would not be with this.
That's what I think she needs to. We need to, Ralph. We need to communicate that back to her that if their intent is to convert this and make it a place where they're going to sell vehicles, and that would not be allowed. Is that because Kirby, what you're going on is basically it's a holding lot that you're looking at and making it where it meets all the parameters to have parking.
To store vehicles. That's
period. I don't think she said that they were planning to sell vehicles out of there.
Well, that's new information. That when the applicant applied, the use that they provided us is vehicle storage, not.
Yes, and I know that she just said that they were planning to sell vehicles out of there. I mean, I heard the same thing Commissioner Uranda heard.
Just another observation.
Commissioner, if I may.
Now, on Google Maps, you see a Charro Auto Sale on that location.
Yes, go ahead.
I believe her location that she sells is across the street from where that storage lot is. I think it's the 3118 that's marked. I believe that's where she's selling vehicles from, if I'm not mistaken. from what I understand what she said.
Ujú.
Is that correct?
Ralph,
Yes.
can you advise her that the property that is currently gonna go a zone change, to be strictly to
Store.
get a conditional use permit that would then allow her to have vehicle storage only, but it would not be allowing sales from that particular lot.
Yes,
I want to
sir.
make sure she understands that that's the deal.
Ok. Ms. Madrigal, en este proceso, en lo que es el cambio de zona y luego el permiso para uso condicional, en ningún momento le permitiría usted poder vender carros de ahí, solo sería para almacenamiento. ¿Sí está de acuerdo con eso?
Completamente de acuerdo. Yo decía, esos carros que vamos a tener almacenados van a ser para la venta, pero si nosotros no podemos vender en esa locación, no hay ningún problema. Movemos esos carros hacia donde podemos. O sea, lo que nosotros queremos hacer es simplemente almacenar. Claro, son carros que se pueden vender, pero si no se puede el cliente ir directamente a esa locación, nosotros el carro lo movemos. O sea, lo que no queremos es, lo que queremos nada más es almacenamiento para poder nosotros tener más espacio.
Gracias. For the commission, she agrees that and understands that she would not be able to sell out of that lot, but if a customer would want to see to see a vehicle, in the case of a sale, they would transfer the vehicle from that lot to the lot where they would actually, the transaction would take place. She understands and concurs.
Ralph, can you ask her, where is the lot where they sell out of? I don't know where it's at.
Ms. Madrigal, en sí, ¿dónde es donde tienen la venta?
Justo enfrente de ese local, es cruzando la calle.
Immediately across the street.
Okay, across the street to the,
3118.
is that going towards the west?
Zapata.
Del lado del poniente es donde están. Ms. Madrigal.
Sí, la dirección es 3118 South Buenavista y este terreno es 3119 enfrente.
It is immediately across the street. The sales take place, like Commissioner Narvaez had mentioned, at 3118.
Okay, because I do see something there. That looks like a lot. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners?
One last thing, Mr. Chairman. Kirby, do you all have the map that actually overlays the zones of each of the properties around the area?
Yes, sir, right here. The brown is R3, the pink is B3. There's some B4 in the top left across the highway.
Okay, so I think the fact that she has her sales lot right across her own street is a very nice thing for her, but a salvage yard, that's the death knell for residential in the surrounding area. Am I mistaken?
No.
You just got to look at that. I mean, that's a beautiful convenience, but those R3s, forget about it. That's gone.
Well, that is what she provided as her intended use. She is in this zone change in no way allows any of those things. This just allows her to go to the lightest commercial zone, which is B1. And from there, she can then ask for a conditional use. And in that condition, when they come back, you can tailor those conditions to say, you can't do any salvage from there. You can only transfer vehicles that are nice, that are good. I mean, it can't be used for salvage. It's for used vehicles that are drivable, that can be sold. You have to transfer them to the other property to show them. You can't bring customers in this area. You can apply those restrictions during the conditional use phase of this, which she would have to come back for at the next meeting.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest we either table the item so they drill down on that, and because the enforcement becomes, well, obviously we all know about that, or we just go down. But those are my thoughts about it.
Okay, very good.
This is Ugalde. I think that she should have come with a conditional along with the zone change, not at two separate times.
Well, her original application that she got in just at the deadline was for M1, which we told her there's no way that's going to work. So what we told her was look, if you go for a B1 and a conditional use permit, that has a much better chance, and we as staff would support that. And so we gave her a day or two to get the conditional use permit complete and in, and she didn't get that in time. And so we've got the zone change here for you today, and then next time she'll have to come back with all the completed, just as you said, to drill down, Commissioner Eckelheimer, on all those details for the conditional use permit.
Well,
And then
Kirby,
we'll
you're
come
making an assumption. You're making an assumption that the commission is going to approve this. So obviously, it depends on what the commission does, based on what the commission recommends at this point. I mean, that's all I can say now. I will add,
And to table this when we can bring you the conditional use permit at the same time.
I think right now what we need to do, that the item is that is before us, there is a public hearing on a zone change. And at this point, I don't know if any other commissioners have any other questions or any other thing that they would like to ask about this.
Well, this Commissioner Dominguez, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll be very brief. I think we need to table this item. Commissioner Beckenheimer is right. I think the lady in question, the applicant, doesn't really know that even if we do the zone change, which I will oppose, when she comes back, she's going to have to put more money and more time. And I personally will not create that type of hardship for the community. It's one person, one property surrounded by a lot of residential, and that residential seems stable. That means that nobody's going to move out of there, or we don't have any more business coming in. So I really believe that we should table it and then have more information as to what the real purpose for that property is, because the way it is right now, we approve, there's no way to actually be checking if they're going to do what they say they're going to be doing, and then we end up with a black patch in the middle of a community. That's my comment.
I think the key thing is that she needs to understand that it's going to take, I mean, it requires paid parking in that whole area. And that's costly. That's very costly for this. But nevertheless, this is a public hearing. And I will now entertain anybody who is willing to speak against, if there's anybody on the line who wishes to speak against the zone change.
Yes, Commissioners, this is Jason Hinojosa for the record.
Yes.
And I received 4 phone calls from concerned neighbors that were strongly opposed to this zone change.
Okay.
Some other concerns summarized were, amounts of traffic, the level of noise, as well as unwarranted guests that hang out in the late evenings, as well as a mess. These are the neighbors that live right directly across. And I'm receiving another phone call, but those were 4 as of right now. Thank you.
And are they just willing to, they're just calling in to say they're opposed it, they don't want to speak? Is that correct?
Well, if we hold somebody on the line, it's difficult to get more than one. So we
Is there anybody on the line who wants to speak against it right now?
Yes, there's one right now. Con permiso, ma'am. ¿Quiere hablar con la comisión? Aquí estamos. ¿Está lista? En contra. Okay, she's just against, a 5th one against.
All right. Does she want to speak?
She did not.
She did not. So that's 4. Is that 4 or 5 people that are against it right now?
She was the 5th one.
5th one. None of them are willing to stay on the line. Okay, so we have 5 people that are.
Correct. I was just fielding the phone call so I can receive more, because they go straight to voicemail if not. But 5 people voiced against.
There's 5 that are against it right now, and they're adjacent property owners. All right.
2 of them live directly across the street, and 1 just halfway down.
Okay. All right. Okay. So is there anybody else? Are you getting anybody else, Jason, on the line?
As of right now, no, those 5, but they did want me to comment that the church that's just north of there, the Alpha Omega on the north side of the block, that was their previous property, and they sold it, and now the church has been closed because they don't have enough parking.
Okay.
And so that was the only other comment they mentioned.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. If there are no other comments, what are the wishes of the commission?
This is Commissioner Dominguez. I'll make a motion to deny the zone change, Mr. Chairman, based on the fact that we will be affecting the community and those 5 people that are opposing it. The motion is to deny the zone change.
All right, I have a motion. Do we have a second on that motion?
Beckelheimer seconds. For Dueñas, está bien.
Beckelheimer seconds it. All right. All right, this is a motion to deny the zone change. Is there anybody who wants to vote against the denial of the zone change? Anybody want to vote against the denial of the zone change? All right, if nobody's willing to vote against that, that means that the motion to deny the zone change carries and the zone change has been denied. Next item. This is
Okay,
the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning approximately 5.01 acres, porción 38, Jose Antonio Nazario, located at south of Celito Lindo Boulevard and east of Ejido Avenue from R1A to B1. Kirby?
yes, and the proposed use here is for a mini storage warehouse. There were 3 letters sent to adjacent property owners. 0 came in for and 0 against. It's located on the south side of the city. Here is a general area view. Here is an aerial view of the property. Here is a view of the current zoning. It's currently R1A and also encompasses it's R1A and it's adjacent to B3 and they're requesting a B1.
The previous map said unplatted, I thought. Unplatted, I see.
Yeah, I mean, it's showing unplatted property.
And the future land use map shows its designation as neighborhood mixed use. Here's a street view of the property, currently undeveloped. The staff recommendation supports the proposed zone change. It is in conformance with the future land use map designation that includes B1, the mixed use zone includes B1. That's an error there, excuse me. The property also complies with the requirements for B1 zoning, and a special use permit will be required in order to allow this property to be used for mini storage. Here's the proposed motion and when you wish to open the public hearing.
All right, this is a public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor? Do we have anybody on the line?
Rafa?
Mr. Chairman, I have been unsuccessful in contacting the applicant. I will keep trying.
With
All
the
right.
applicants, we call them the day before, we prepare them, we ask them for another phone number where they can be reached. So we do our best to make sure they know the time, and do all we can to get a hold of them. So there may be some issue on their end, where they're not able to be connected.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I get a clarification?
Yes, sir.
What is that large building? I presume it's a school. What is that building to the right? It says institutional, then it says unplatted, so it says both, but it looks like a school, or what is that?
Yes, sir, that is a school.
Yeah, is that that's by LBJ somewhere up there.
It's Lamar Bruni Middle School.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I do have Ricardo Villarreal from Howland Engineering on the line for any questions for the commission.
All right, put them on.
Hello, everybody. Ricardo Villarreal, Howland Engineering, in favor of this item, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay. Does anybody in the commission have any questions for Mr. Villarreal? Okay. All right.
Wait, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, one quick question, Beckelheimer.
Go ahead.
So the plan is to create a 300-acre mini storage unit facility?
Yes, currently, the current plan right now is to convert those 5 acres into a storage unit. Yes.
Oh, 5 acres.
Yeah, 5 acres.
Yeah, I think it's.
Doesn't the agenda item say 300 acres?
No, it says 5.01.
think it's 5.01.
Yeah. 5.01 is what they're rezoning.
All right, I'm on the wrong item.
Okay, any other questions for Ricardo?
Oh, 5 acres.
All right, no questions heard. Thank you very much, Mr. Villarreal. Do we have anybody else who wishes to speak in favor of this on the line, Ralph? Ralph is muted.
It is Jason Inosa who's handling the
I'm
call in,
sorry.
and he will chime in if there is somebody on the line. So with nobody calling in, there are none.
There are none there. Okay. Anybody who wishes to speak against the zone change?
I'll just add that it's difficult for us to queue up for and against because we have one person.
I understand. I'm just going through the motion.
Okay.
With nobody else, we'll give this a few seconds to see if anybody calls in on this item.
Mr. Chairman, one quick point while we're waiting.
Sure.
Is that obviously schools have been pushed back 6 additional weeks. I presume we're going to be doing meetings like this possibly for the rest of the year. If you could ensure that staff looks into updating the technology so that we can do these meetings a little more efficiently.
Well, you mean by what would you recommend, George, or what are you seeing, or what?
Well, having people holding in a queue isn't 21st century technology. That goes back to the 20th century. So there's got to be something. I mean, I'm not an expert, as everybody knows, but having 4 or 5 people holding on a phone isn't that complicated. That's all. Like when we start the citizens' comments in the beginning, well, they can already be lined up to speak if they've been notified and if the calls have been received and they're put on hold. So
sure.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I think it's probably just simply giving them the invite to the meeting. I don't know why you wouldn't invite them to the meeting and have them muted. Like when we have court, all the parties that have litigation in front of the court that day, they just sit there and they're muted until they're called upon to talk, and then they leave when they're done. Probably doing something similar to that would be the solution.
It's a good point.
Commissioners, appreciate the feedback. Maybe at director's comments, we can talk a little bit about the limitations and the challenges and take any advice that you have.
Very good. Thank you. With nobody else on the phone, what are the wishes of the commission?
I'll make a motion to close public hearing and support staff recommendation for a zone change. Advice?
Advice?
Second, Ugalde.
Second from Ugalde. Anybody who wishes to vote against this item on the zone change? Against? Nobody wishes to vote, so that means everybody voted yes. The item carries. Zone change is approved. Next item, amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning lot 1, block 1, McPherson Road Vet Clinic plat, located 6602 McPherson Road, from a B1 to a B3. Kirby?
Yes, sir. The proposed use is a convenience store. 22 letters were sent to neighboring property owners. We received 0 for and 0 against. Here's a general area map. Again, the address is 6602 McPherson Road. Here is an aerial view showing the undeveloped property. Here's a view of the current zoning. It's currently zoned B1 and adjacent to B3, and there are B4 across the street. And then behind the property is residential R1. Here is a look at the future land use designations of the property and adjacent properties. It is designated as neighborhood mixed use. Here's a street view of the property. And staff supports the proposed zone change. It's in conformance with the future land use designation, and it is compatible with the commercial uses in the area. And here's the proposed motion and the public hearing when you choose to open it.
All right, this is a public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor of the zone change?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I do have Fred Guerra, the consultant on this project, available for any questions from the commission.
All right. Does anybody in the commission have any questions for Mr. Fred Guerra?
This is Commissioner Dominguez. Just something quick. Being that we have residential in the back, is there going to be a buffer, Mr. Chairman, in between the commercial and the residential? And what does the developer proposes to have in order not to create a confrontation with the owners of the residential? That's my question.
I think what I saw on the picture that Kirby showed us, there's a block fence. The ordinance calls for a 7-foot thick fence to separate the zones. Kirby, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, but that's my understanding.
That is correct.
It has to be a 7-footer. I think that's a 6-footer.
Is there also a setback? It's a B3, isn't that 30 feet or 20?
There is this is a B3 zone. I believe the setback on that should be about 10 feet. Anybody from planning can chime in just to confirm what I'm telling them is correct. I think the front is a 25-foot setback, and I think the back is 10 feet.
We do have requirements for setback. We also have requirements for screening. And so obviously those requirements will be put in place. You can also ask the applicant if they're willing to do anything more, but that's not anything they're bound to.
Mr. Chairman, you are correct. On the B3, it is 25 front and the 10 in the back.
All right.
Well, I'm sorry, on the rear, yes.
Yes, on the rear.
It's correct.
Does Mr. Guerra, this is a question for the engineer, Mr. Guerra. What are you proposing in the back in terms of screening, if anything?
Yes, well, I have not seen any site plan yet, but yeah, I'll bring it. I'll bring it to the attention of the owner, the developer. So I'm sure he puts a screen. I'm not exactly sure as to what they're intending to put there, but you know, I'm assuming that it's going to have a drive-through of some sort.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the commissioners for Mr. Guerra? All right. If not, is there anybody else on the line who wishes to speak on this item, whether for or against? For or against?
Commissioner, I have
Yes.
one on the phone, but he's on the 30-second delay and he would like to chime in.
That's fine. We'll wait for him.
Is he a for or an against?
Against.
That's fine. Just put him on whenever he comes on cue.
I have a quick question for Kirby.
Yes, sir.
So if the zone gets approved and you,
On the wall?
the concerns about,
Ready?
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Are you calling again?
No, either again this word. My concern is the wall is it going to be raised?
I'm sorry. I didn't get his name. Did y'all get his name for the record?
Mr. Santiago, could you say your name and what if you're for or against?
Yes. Jaime Santiago. I'm not for or against at the moment. My question is, my concern is the wall behind it, is it going to be raised?
Kirby, you want to answer that, or Ralph, on what the ordinance calls for?
There is a screening requirement of 7 feet. And so if that does not meet the 7 feet, they will have to raise it.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant, for the caller on the line. All right. Thank you very much for your comments, sir. Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
We closed the phone call since that was his only concern.
That was his concern, all right. Is there anybody else on the line who wishes to speak for or against the item?
None at the moment.
All right, we'll give it a few seconds. All right, what are the wishes of the commission?
Beckelheimer moves to close public hearing and recommend approval of the item.
This is Ugalde. I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and we have a second. All those who would vote against the item, against the motion. With none heard, then everybody is in approval of the item. The zone change is approved. The next item is amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning approximately 48.08 acres located east of Cuatro Vientos Road and north of Wormser Road from AG to R1A. All right, Kirby?
Yes, the applicant is MRMD Development, the owner, and the applicant is, the representative is Manuel E. Escamilla. And as you stated, this property is located east of Cuatro Vientos Road and north of Wormser Road. It's currently zoned ag, and they're seeking R1A. The proposed use single-family residential. 12 letters were sent to neighboring property owners. We received 0 for and 0 against. Here's the general location. You can see in the blue marker on the southeast side of the city. Here is an aerial view of the property showing the undeveloped and unplatted land. The current zoning is ag, but it is adjacent to R1A. Here is the future land use designation, which designates this land as low density residential. Here's a street view, as close as we could get, showing the undeveloped property. Staff supports the proposed zone change. It's in conformance with the future land use designation, and it's compatible with the mix of uses in the area, and it complies with the requirements for R1A. Here is the proposed motion, and when you're ready to open the public hearing, here's the call-in number.
All right. This is a public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak for or against the item, we will take the call.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, we do have Mr. Manuel Escamilla available for any questions from the commission.
Okay. Does anybody on the commission have any questions for Mr. Escamilla?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. This is Beckelheimer. Mr. Escamilla, ¿me entiendes en inglés o prefieres español?
English.
Okay, great.
English is fine.
How is the is there a proposed north-south a connector as part of this? I'm just curious how this, or maybe the city has the answer. Will this connect to the Los Presidentes Road extension out to the east?
We're specifically talking about the master plan. The master plan has a north-south collector that is called Isla Mujeres.
Okay, very good. And that'll collect up to what road?
I guess the next major east-west road would be Los Presidentes.
Very good. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Escamilla?
This is Commissioner Dominguez, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I noticed that most of the land surrounding this property is undeveloped. So we're going to approve or disapprove a zone change to an R1A. Now, right now, there's none of the areas have been developed. So we're taking for granted that there's going to be possible access for the access and for the exit of the property. And just to put it on record, we need to, when it comes to us on the plat, we need to make sure that the that the stages are going to be appropriate. So any section of the subdivision, Mr. Chairman, has a proper, at least two entrances, so there will not be any congestions on the exit of the traffic in those properties. So just, I think R1A is proper. See, I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem is that the mention of Mr. Escamilla on the plat that there will be the access, the proper access road. It's only an assumption. A lot of things change as property is being developed.
Well, and so noted, but at this point, all we're doing is a zone change. They still got to bring in their plat.
That is correct, sir.
So it's just a zone change. So that's a good observation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? All right. Is there anybody else on the line who would want to speak for or against?
No, sir.
Okay. With nobody else on the line, what are the wishes of the commission?
Beckelheimer will move to close public hearing and recommend approval.
I'll second the motion. Commissioner.
Motion on the second. Anybody who wishes to vote against the motion, With none heard, the motion is approved. The next item is amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning lot 4, block 178, Western Division, located at 1007 Sandario Avenue from B1 to B3. Kirby?
Yes, sir. The applicant is FSPJ.
Mr. Sorry to interrupt. Can I abstain from this item?
I'm sorry, who's this speaking?
Ugalde.
Yes, sir, you can abstain.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Kirby, I'm sorry.
The applicant is FSPJM Investments, LLC, and Felipe Villalma. The property is located, as you mentioned, at 1007 San Dario Avenue. This is a B1 seeking a B3 zoning. The proposed use is commercial, and they are desiring to have a CEVMS, which is a commercial electronic variable message sign, an electronic sign. We've mailed out 23 letters to properties surrounding the property, and we received 0 for and 0 against. This is located near our downtown. Here is an aerial view of the property. There's a view showing the current zoning. It's currently a B1, which is the light pink, and they're seeking a B3, which is the darker pink. You can see they're adjacent to a B3. Here is the future land use map, which designates this area as neighborhood mixed use, which allows for a range of residential and commercial zones. Here's a street view of the property. Staff supports the proposed zone change. The zone change is in conformance with the future land use map. The neighborhood mixed use allows for a range of different zoning. It just excludes our heaviest zones of industrial and commercial. The proposed use is compatible with the mix of commercial uses in the area. And staff recommends the applicant needs to verify the distance requirements. That'll be a separate process when they actually seek the electronic sign, but having this zone would allow them to have that electronic sign to the size that they want. Here is the proposed motion, and when you're ready, here is the number for the public hearing.
All right, this is a public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak for or against will take their call.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, we do have Mr. Felipe Vielma, the applicant, Felipe Vielma Jr., for any questions that the commission may have.
All right. Does the commission have any questions for Mr. Vielma?
This is Commissioner Dominguez, Mr. Chairman. I have a question.
I'm sorry, who has a question? Commissioner Dominguez?
Yes. The billboard, is that for the personal use or the expressive use of the firm, or is that going to be a commercial board? That was my first question. And the second part of my question is, the distance between boards, if there's any billboards in the area. I know there's an ordinance that creates certain distance and more when it's on a state corridor. So that was my question for Mr. Vieira.
Mr. Villalba, were you able to hear that?
No, I really couldn't hear the question. Can you repeat the question?
Certainly, Mr. Villalba, the initial question is with regards to the use of the sign, of the electronic sign, if it will be just for your own personal business use, or would it also be for the use of others? Will you be renting space out on it? That was question number one.
It was keep for businesses that are on the premises only.
And then,
as well as our business, yeah. Our business, any other businesses that are on the premises only.
Very well. And then the secondary question to that was if you were familiar or were aware of some of the distance requirements along this corridor with regards to the placement of your sign in relation to other signs?
Yes, I believe it was a 5-foot setback is what I had seen, and I think we would be complying with that.
Now, there's a distance requirement in between signs. If I'm not mistaken, is that correct?
The other signs would apply because it's not an off-premise sign. It's only on-premise. We're not going to be displaying anything else.
Okay.
From our own business.
All right. Okay, that works. Anybody else on the commission have any questions for Mr. Villalba?
I have a question for staff. Dave?
Go ahead.
How much of this is controlled by the state or the federal government based on the premises is essentially the interstate highway?
The TxDOT does have oversight on when signs are adjacent to their right of way. And that is a process they will have to go through. So this process in no way guarantees them what they're asking for. They still have to go through the building department to meet the requirements for the sign. And then they also have to get a sign off from TxDOT as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I may elaborate quickly, that was part of my question. In regard to making the zone change, wouldn't it be more appropriate to have the pre-approval by TxDOT before we do a zone change? Why would we want to do a zone change based on the assumption that it's going to be approved by the TxDOT? I think, in all fairness, even to the applicant, even doing a zone change, which is not needed if the sign is not going to be approved. I mean, that's my comment right there.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Anybody else have any comments or any questions?
Buenas.
Yes, sir.
Ahí veo que está en downtown y veo que está un edificio hermoso. Si vamos a querer también como ciudad revitalizar el downtown y ver algo hermoso, no me gustaría contaminarlo llenándolo de letreros. Yo creo que como está bien. No estoy muy de acuerdo en poner un letrero. Gracias.
Okay. Anybody else on the commission have any questions or any comments?
I have a question, Beckelheimer. Kirby, along those lines of Mr. Dueñas, actually everybody's concerned about distance and so on, but does this have a size, a specific size set to it, or is this up to the whole 45 or 50 foot size that's allowed?
For the B3, there are size restrictions for each zone. And so they could still have a sign with the current zoning they're in, B1, but it would be shorter and smaller. And going to the B3 allows it to be taller and a bigger sign.
Okay, so taller and bigger, can you just tell us what those limits are?
I believe, I will look it up to confirm, but I believe it is, well, let me just look it up. Just give me a second and I'll look it up.
All right.
And if the applicant is still on the line, Mr. Chairman, more or less, how many businesses are on the premises that would be that would be advertised, pardon me.
Okay.
Mr. Viedma, were you able to hear the question?
Was there how many businesses will we be advertising currently?
That is correct, yes, sir.
We have our law firm here on the first floor. We also have a CPA upstairs, and we have a hairstyle upstairs as well. And we have several offices available for advertisement as well. Or once we rent them out, those will be available as well. But currently, we have 3 offices here that are in use.
Rafa, just a reminder, when you're not when you or the applicant's not speaking, Rafa, if you could mute yourself, thank you.
Absolutely.
We heard that, Rafa.
The applicant did mention that there are currently 3 people or businesses occupied there, and they do have a few available spaces for the future as well.
The only reason I ask is along the lines again of what was already commented on is how big of a sign is required for personal advertising on a single premise as opposed to, advertising that you rent out. There's a policing at Kirby that the signs, if they're in this section on private premise, there's a policing of that the utilization is strictly for the businesses itself.
To answer your previous question, Rafa, can you mute, please? Thank you, Rafa. So to answer your question, the previous question, in a B1, they are permit a freestanding electronic sign, a message display sign. In a B1, they can do 100 square feet size and 15 feet height. And in a B3, they could do 50 feet height and 200 square feet size. And your other question, I'm sorry, I was looking up this information. What was your other question, Commissioner Beckelheimer?
He's muted.
Sorry about that, Erasmo. The ability to advertise for off-site stuff like advertising or for just the publicity of your businesses on-site, somebody brought that up based on its location near the freeway, and so I can't remember the exact question.
Yeah, there are, the signage is treated differently based on whether you're advertising on-site or off-site, and there are stricter requirements for advertising off-site. I can't speak to all the sign requirements. I'd have to look that up to say what the difference is for this specific site. And then there may as well be restrictions for TxDOT.
Not to interrupt you, Kirby. I don't think that they would qualify based on how close other signs are, like a block away for off-site. I think they're restricted based on proximity of other existing signs to limit them to only on-site advertising.
All right. Any other questions on this item?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant would like to address the commission one more time if possible.
Of course.
Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. This is Nelly Dialma, and I would like to address some of the questions that I've been hearing here. First of all, I had applied for a B4 about 2 years ago, and I was halfway through the course, but the B4 required a 10,000 square footage on the land. So I was not able to proceed because the recommendation at that time from the Planning and Zoning Commission, or no, from the Planning and Zoning Department was to plat all the lots that we have adjacent. So we thought that was very costly. And so the next option, which I just became aware of more recently, was the B3.
which will be a smaller setback, and which with the height just being a little bit higher than the building, we will meet the setback. As to the on or off premise, from my understanding, and I've been looking at this from the moment that we purchased this building, but at that time the whole ordinance was still being changed, and so it's been just postponed and postponed. So we do not qualify for off-premise advertisement, and according to the person, Mr. Tomas Lambraña, that gave me the estimate, the picture submitted to you, he advised that we will not have to go to TxDOT because we're not doing off-premise. Now, on-premise nearby me, I've seen IBC, and they have electronic signs. I've seen signs approved by San Bernardo, which are nearby, other, Lamar advertisement. And pretty much it's a monopoly. This off-premise is already staked by, Lamar and all the big advertisements. But looking at the future, electronic signs is what every business will need. And we see this in a lot of the areas, for example, on Elmar, on McPherson, on Shiloh, where we have a lot of smaller businesses. So we believe that we qualify because we're adjacent and highway frontage. So it's a prime location as you're coming in from Mexico. And we also believe that we qualify for the zone change because we have B3 next door to us, and we have B3 within a block north and a block south. So we would respectfully request your consideration for the approval to a B3, and then we'll deal with if there's anything else from TxDOT. But at this point, the sign installer doesn't believe that we need anything from TxDOT, but we'll still verify, of course.
Thank you very much for those comments.
Commissioner Tellez, to answer your question, if it is on premise, they're allowed one per lot of the CEVMS, the electronic sign. If it is off premise, you're right, there is a spacing requirement, and it's 1,500 feet. So they can't be.
Yeah, I wasn't asking the question. I was just saying that when it's on-premise advertising, like Councilwoman Vielma said, they can advertise all they want if it's on-premise. It's when they're off-premise that they wouldn't even be able to do off-premise advertising because of the proximity to other billboards that are already there.
Yes, and I was confirming that and just letting you know the exact dimension is 1,500 feet. That's the requirement.
Yep. Okay. All right. Do we have anybody else on the line who would like to speak towards this particular item, either for or against the zone change?
No, we don't.
All right. Do we have any further questions from the commission members? If we don't, what are the wishes of the commission?
This Commissioner Dominguez. I'll make a motion to approve as specified by staff.
Meckelheimer, second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Does anybody wish to vote against the recommendation to approve? With none heard, the item is approved.
Yeah, one abstain, Chairman. This
One abstain, I'm sorry. Ugaldes abstained. All right, the motion is approved. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. The next item is a review and consideration of the following master plans. First one that we have is review and reconsideration of the College Heights subdivision master plan. The intent is residential and commercial. This revision reconfigures Unit 3 to further subdivide existing lots in Block 13 and 15. Who's going to make the presentation?
Mr. Vidauri will make the presentations for the plats.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, we did receive a request from the applicant to have this item tabled time certain.
Very good. Do we have a motion to table?
Meckelheimer, move the table.
Second. And there's a second. Does anybody wish to vote against the table of this item? If not, motion carries. Next item is review and reconsideration of Cuatro Vientos Sur subdivision master plan. The intent is residential, commercial, and institutional. And the revision configures phase 7 from commercial to residential. Yes, sir.
For the record, the applicant is Laredo Four Winds Limited. The engineer is Porras Nance Engineering, 184-acre tract of land located west of Cuatro Vientos Road and north of Pitamagana Road. The zoning is R1, R1A, R1MH, B1, and B3. The proposed use is residential commercial institution, and the proposed lots are 883. This is the general location map, aerial view, street view, and the proposed master plan. These are the comments from planning, environmental, water and utilities, traffic safety. Continue from traffic safety and the proposed motion.
All right. Can you go back to the planning comments? Comment number 4, and I'm gonna, this is rename Dolly Richter Boulevard to Bianca Lane to be consistent throughout. I know that the traffic department approved Dolly Richter, Dolly, yeah. So I guess my question to you is, I know that Bianca Lane is already there, right?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
This particular property is, if I'm not mistaken, the old Richter farm. So I guess the question that I have for you guys in planning is, Bianca Lane at this point doesn't look to me like it has any addressing on it at this point. And I'm just going to throw this out as discussion for the commission. It seems to me that the Dolly Richter Boulevard name would be more name that would be identification of an area, and it would probably be more appropriate to have that whole street that was Bianca Lane maybe rename Dolly Richter Boulevard to be consistent. I'm throwing that out. It's just an observation by me.
Fernando, are you on the line? Can you speak to what would be required to readdress the lots that have already been addressed on Dolly Richter, or on Bianca, if we're going to change it all to Dolly Richter? Is that what you're suggesting, Commissioner Villarreal,
That's what I was suggesting, yeah, because I saw at Bianca Lane, it doesn't look to me like there's any lots in front of it, or there's any lots that have been addressed yet.
Fernando, you're still muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. It's my understanding that there are no addresses of Bianca Lane.
Okay. All right. Well, that was just, my suggestion was that probably be more appropriate to just keep a boulevard name all the way through as opposed to a lane. That's my comment on that. Do we have anybody on the line that would like to address this particular issue?
Mr. Chairman, Danny Tijerina for the record. I have Wayne Nance on the phone. Wayne, can you hear Wayne?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
yes,
there you go.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is Wayne Nance, Porras Engineering. Yes, we concur with all comments. Item number 4, though, we're currently working with the planning department to identify a name that would be consistent throughout for that road. And I'm sure we'll be able to address that before this gets to final. But apart from that, we concur with all these comments.
All right. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Nance from the commission? Okay. Well, if no questions, then thank you, Mr. Nance. I mean, I did, I don't know if you heard that, I saw the comment on Dolly Richter Boulevard. It would seem more appropriate to me to have that name continue all the way through. It looks like a longer section as opposed to having Bianca Lane. But that's something you can work out with planning. All right. With no other comments or questions, what are the wishes of the commission?
I move that we close public hearing and recommend approval.
All right.
I'll
We-
second the motion, Commissioner Dominguez.
Dominguez seconds the motion. Does anybody want to vote against the motion? Against the motion? With none heard, the motion carries. It's approved. Next item is review and consideration of Port Grande subdivision master plan and granting of a waiver from the street length requirement for the subdivision ordinance. The intent is industrial. Yes, sir?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, we did receive correspondence from the applicant requesting that this item be tabled time uncertain.
Okay, very good. We can do that. Before we make,
sorry.
before we make a motion, I have a question for the planning department. Do we have, can you guys give me an update, or is there an update? I know way back when this particular item came to the commission, we asked them to look to see if they could get another way out of this whole area, which I think we were looking at the old Doctor's Road, which is north of this property. Is there any update of, does there anything happen there? Or does anybody know on the planning staff?
Do not have an update at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Nobody in the planning staff has an update. Are y'all familiar with that? What I'm talking about or not?
With the TIA that was formally completed, is what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, we knew that this particular development is going to create, and it's generating already a lot of truck traffic that is backing up big time. You only have two entrances into this area. One of them is a grade separation and the other one is not. There was a suggestion, recommendation made that there be another grade separation directly north of this, what used to be called Doctor's Road, which is adjacent to this property, just to the north of it. I don't know if anybody has been working to see if that comes to fruition.
We have our traffic director on in the meeting. Mr. McGee, do you have anything you would like to add regarding this?
With respect to Doctor's Road, I don't have anything to add. However, I was tasked by City Council to look at improving the situation out there as a whole. And just this week, I am in discussion with TxDOT and the Texas Transportation Institute to look at improving the egress out of that whole area. So we are working on that. And then if in the long term, TxDOT already has studies and a definite plan for a new interchange there at Union Road and I-35. So it is moving. Short term, I'm looking at, and TxDOT has plans in the intermediate term.
Do you, Dan, have any kind of timeframes from TxDOT on that proposed interchange?
I know it's just a matter of 2, 3, or 4, not more than 4 years. I can get you that information, though. Yeah.
I was just wondering, because I know the congestion is pretty heavy in that area on a daily basis. And that's what I was just, I wanted to see if we could address that and just kind of like somebody start working on this thing, because it is a big, it's a big problem, to be honest with you, right now in that area.
Yes, we are moving on it, and we realize how bad it is, and we are doing something about it. These studies that will get something going in the immediate future.
Now, let me ask you, if I don't know, you might not have enough. The proposed interchange that TxDOT is proposing for this area, where would that be located, more or less?
Well, they're going to widen the existing interchange there at Union Royal. And there's been some different iterations of it. At one point, it was going to be a larger interchange. But from what I understand, and I can't be 100% sure if this is the latest plan, but they were going to go back to the original plan, was just to widen a few lanes underneath the highway and make 3 lanes on top. And then they were going to take the balance of that money and hopefully use it where the new a char road would come out, the Ruthinger.
All right.
I will get you the details on that just to be definite. Right now, I'm speculating based off the last thing I heard.
That's fine, but I think it's something that I'm glad you're working on it, because this is an area that I see it's going to really boom, but it really won't happen until that interchange to give these people a way out happens. But at least somebody's looking into it. Anyway, we have a motion. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just last thing to add. I have met with several of the companies out there, Werner and some of the other major companies, and we have some conversations with them. And then also with Majestic, the one that owns the extra land out there, they're also very, very interested in working with us too. So there's a lot of impetus to get this going from all sides.
Great, great. All right, thank you. Gentlemen, I need a motion to table this item.
Beckelhammer moved to table this item.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Dominguez. Does anybody wish to vote against the table of this item? Motion to table is approved. Next item is review and reconsideration of the Killam Industrial Master Plan. The intent is industrial. The purpose of the revision is to reconfigure phases and realign streets. All right.
Rafa, you are muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you. For the record, the applicant is Killam Development Limited, Killam Ranch Properties Limited, Engineer Sec Engineering, 1,209 acre tract of land located north of FM 3464 and west of FM 1472. The zoning is M1, the proposed use industrial, and the proposed lots are 172. General location, aerial view, street view, and the proposed master plan, or proposed revised master plan.
Would you like to give any detail, Rafa, as to the revision?
Yes, the revision actually has up here for the Vallecillo Road, connecting up this way, and Inter-America no longer connecting up to Vallecillo Road.
So there's the change to the arterial on the north side of the master plan.
All right, so that the connection then is going on Vallecillo. It's going to come out where if it's no longer going to be in Inter-America? Is it going to be on Muller or what?
It would be in front of Muller, yes.
Now, why would we put it in front of Muller? Muller, if you go on Muller, you're going into a residential subdivision.
That is, if I may, that is the proposed alignment that they are recommending. That is also the proposed alignment based on the RMA's suggestions as well.
Okay, my question is really, wouldn't it make more sense to align that to Inter-America, which is an industrial park, than to align it to a street that is going into a residential section?
Mr. Chairman, I think I can contribute a little bit to this.
All right.
The design itself I had nothing to do with, but in theory, the idea was so that people exiting the Muller subdivision can go straight onto Vallecillo and avoid Mines Road altogether and get over to 35, if they choose to do so. So there was consideration during the design phase, which is still subject to modification, and that was one of the considerations.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right, thank you for that comment, Commissioner. All right.
Comments, staff comments from planning, environmental, water and utilities, traffic safety, and Texas Department of Transportation.
Okay.
Mr.
Motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
The need for off-site parking is a problem that's not going to go away if we don't help the developers or the city itself crafts a plan. I don't know what that looks like, but the plan to widen roads so that the tractor trailers can queue up on city right-of-ways isn't the answer. And so I just want us to all be aware of that as we continue to add more industrial parks, that there needs to be off-site parking, and it can't be City of Laredo streets. I'm hoping to see more aggressive ticketing in the future to prevent that from happening and causing the risk associated with that. I don't know if it's too late, but as the planning department reviews these designs, I would hope that they would look at those considerations.
Very good. Okay. I know that when flats come in and businesses get a permit to construct, I think what has happened, to be honest with you, is a lot of these businesses and warehouses have grown exponentially, much bigger than they were originally intended to, and therefore you're seeing the spillage going out into the streets. That's what I see myself. But your point is well taken in terms of when a new construction is coming in and stuff. Let me now ask this: do we have anybody who wishes to speak on the line on this particular item?
Mr. Chairman, this is Danny McGee. At whatever point you think is appropriate, I have a comment or two I'd like to.
Go right ahead, Dan.
Okay. This development, it's a very large development, and in some ways, in my opinion, as a traffic engineer, is we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. Is that the road's being designed, and then a traffic study is going to be done after the fact to justify that design, and it doesn't really give you the opportunity to change things. Like, for instance, if that's the right place for the intersection to be, like when you're mentioning at Inter-America instead, the footprint of the highway is being done. It doesn't justify the amount of lanes and that kind of thing. You've heard some of our public officials say that Mines Road is a very bad condition. We're adding more traffic to it. This road's being kind of touted as a relief, but I have my doubts about that. I would really like to see those numbers in a traffic study right now rather than later.
Good point. Good point.
Dueñas.
Yes.
Quiero comentar, Chairman, estamos hablando de 172 lotes. Si cada lote maneja 10 trailers, son 1,720 trailers que van a circular.
Sí.
Manejan 50 trailers en promedio, estamos hablando de 8,000 trailers que van a circular. Creo que debemos proteger un poco al vecindario que está ahí, al habitacional, y tener muy claras las salidas de las que me hablan, porque parece que estamos hablando en futuro, en vallecillos, en calles que no existen, ni siquiera trazadas en un master plan. Creo que en este momento sería un error aumentar muchísimo tráfico de trailers en esa zona. Ese es mi punto. Necesitamos más información de las calles que van a dar la entrada y la salida a esas trailers. Gracias, compañeros. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ugalde.
Yes.
So this is a revision to reconfigure phases, right, of a master plan that was already approved?
Yes.
So then shouldn't we have been discussing this prior?
Well, there's a lot of things that have been going on, I mean, this by Seals Road, the Ruthinger Road, there's a lot of roads up in that area that we've heard about for some time now, right? Yet we haven't seen anything come to fruition. I don't know if Kirby or somebody from the city staff can update us as to what is going on with by Seals Road or the Ruthinger Road. Where are we at? Is there
another?
We have
another comment. I'm sorry, before you, Kirby. So now they're proposing these the roads and the reconfiguration. So we don't do a traffic impact analysis study, or is that on the developer to provide that to us?
Can I make a comment real fast?
Sure.
I need to recuse myself from any discussion on the Ruthinger Road because they're my clients. So I'm just going to abstain from the conversation. I know we're not voting, but I just want to note that I'm not involved in the conversation.
All right. Well noted. All right, Kirby.
Yes, so a couple of questions. One, regarding these roads we have that you mentioned, we have our city engineer in the meeting, Ramon Chavez, if he wants to speak to Ruthinger. And what was the other road you mentioned, Commissioner?
Seals.
Seals?
Yes.
Ramon, would you like to speak to those? Status of those? You're muted, Ramon.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Ramon Chavez, city engineer. As far as Vallecillo is concerned, there's an interlocal agreement that is pending execution. I do have a meeting with our assistant city manager tomorrow to go over both of these projects, to provide them an update as far as what's pending. But right now, that's what is pending as far as Vallecillo is concerned, for the city to execute the interlocal agreement. As far as Ruthinger is concerned, we have been working with TxDOT, and we have received an AFA that was also pending execution for the Ruthinger portion. So that is part of my meeting tomorrow with our assistant city manager to discuss.
Okay. Let me ask you another question then on that. Is there any, I know there was some TxDOT funding that was proposed for some of these roads. Is that still on the table, or is that gone, or what is the funding mechanism that we're looking at for these roads?
There is funding. I'll start with Achar Ruthinger. There's funding of 26.7 million for the Achar portion of the Achar Ruthinger. As far as the Ruthinger portion, there's 21.4 million that are that we're working with TxDOT on.
Okay, so is that enough funding to be able to construct that road all the way to 35, or?
So those are the things that we'll be discussing as well, as far as estimates are concerned, and I will have to, once we get into the PSNE, so that we can make sure that these fundings will be enough.
Are those fundings, do they have any deadline, or are they just tied to the project?
They're tied to advanced funding agreements with TxDOT.
But are they time certain, or are they just solely tied to the project?
They're tied to the project.
Ramon, is there any, I know that many years ago, there was some design that was started by a firm that is no longer employed by the city. Is there any design work on this thing already done on the Achar Ruthinger, or is it all going to start again, or what?
There's some environmental that's been done, and some schematics.
Some schematics. Okay, so there's no design yet, no contracts have been awarded yet.
No, those are the things that we're working with TxDOT, and like I mentioned, there's AFA agreements that are pending that I'll be discussing again as part of my meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll be able to provide. I mean, at least this is some information, but I can definitely be able to provide additional information by next week for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. What about on Vallecillos? Is there, you talked about having to sign an interlocal agreement. Is that correct?
Yes, there's an interlocal agreement that's pending execution.
Now, that interlocal agreement is between what parties?
The city and the RMA.
Okay. Now, is there funding available for Vallecillos?
Yes, monies have been allocated.
All right. Is this Vallecillos Road already started some of the preliminary work, like environmental clearance and schematic design or design?
Not to my knowledge, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much for your comments. Does anybody have any questions for the city engineer? All right.
Dueñas.
Yes.
No tenemos todavía precisado, Mr. Chávez, el tamaño de las calles, el ancho de las calles, y debemos, insisto, en considerar el flujo de trailas, porque tenemos problemas en otros parques industriales donde las trailas se forman en la calle para entrar a una bodega y perjudican a los vecinos y perjudican a los demás. Aquí no veo tampoco un parking lot para trailas. Entonces tenemos que ver primero las entradas y las salidas, el ancho de las calles, ¿verdad? Si va a existir un parking lot, si van a reservar un espacio para parking lot. Y tres, hoy por hoy todo esto saldría otra vez por las minas. No estamos conectados todavía a la 35. Entonces, creo que llenaríamos mucho de tráfico donde todavía no podemos resolver un problema de tráfico que existe ahorita. Me gustaría que el comité tuviera más de información del tamaño de calles, de la entrada y salida correcta que se le va a dar y los tiempos para cuándo se podría conectar a la 35 de forma estimada. Sugiero que lo pongan a la tabla en lo que el comité cuenta con toda esa información. Gracias.
Gracias.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to table time uncertain, but prior to it coming back, that we have a study based with concrete numbers by the traffic department, as well as the widths of the right-of-ways and the streets that are being proposed in this project, as stated by Commissioner Dueñas, and a complete plan and approval by the traffic department before we even get into the beginning parts of this, because it is such an important arterial to be developed on the north side of Laredo.
Okay, we have.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Ramon Chavez, just briefly. Yes, just for information purposes, there is a transportation planning study for North Laredo Webb County done through the RMA by HNTB. So I'd really recommend for Kirby, that has a copy of it, I'm sure, and to forward it to all the members of the commission. There's a lot of information in there related to this motion.
Is there, let me ask you a real quick question. Is there a TTI on it?
No, sir, there's not. Not for this.
So there's no TTI, and that's what I know Commissioner Dueñas was, a lot of the commissioners were kind of like, and you know, we heard that from our traffic director that a TTI should be done prior to any of this thing really moving forward, which makes a lot of sense and just common sense. But it's just.
And I'd like to make a comment. I appreciate the city engineer referencing a study that's already been done, but unfortunately that's not part of our packet that we receive ahead of time. And that would be good information to receive before the meeting, not being told by the city engineer at the meeting. But this is the type of long-term project that our city needs, and we'd like to know about this stuff and this information ahead of time.
I concur with Tejas. Well,
we have a motion from Commissioner Tejas. Do I have a second?
Second, Dueñas.
Second from Dueñas. Those who would like to vote against the proposed tabling of the item.
I need to, they didn't ask me anything.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Danny Tijerina, I have the project engineer on the phone, and he would like to comment on the project.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Hugo Seca, Tech Engineering for the record. All the issues that you're discussing about the width of the streets, the traffic being generated and all of that, the RMA is already conducting a traffic study for the Vallecillo Road, and we are conducting a traffic study for the connection of Interamerica to Mines Road. All those issues will be, the traffic study will bring recommendations, and it will be presented to the city and to the state. And if need be, if the streets need to be adjusted or realigned, we'll do that based on the results of the traffic study. I don't think the item needs to be tabled. We need a resolution from the commission today. We have been addressing all the comments since we presented the item at the last P&Z meeting.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the engineer, Mr. Seca?
Dueñas, ingeniero, estoy escuchando que usted dice que apenas va a hacer el estudio de tráfico. Entonces volvemos a tener que tomar una decisión con supuestos. No tenemos ese estudio de tráfico. Aún no está usted listo con la ampliación de las calles. Entonces, yo creo que es contradictorio el pedir que votemos en este momento cuando no tenemos la información completa y actualizada que ustedes todavía están en estudio. Thank you.
I guess because
nosotros estamos siguiendo las medidas o lo ancho de las calles que requiere la ciudad de Laredo en este momento. Así es que si el estudio nos dice que en las esquinas tenemos que agregar ya sea carriles para que den vueltas hacia un lado o hacia el otro, pues se va a contemplar eso también, pero por el momento, ahorita nosotros estamos siguiendo todo lo que la ciudad de Laredo requiere.
Commissioner, I believe that there's a motion on the floor as well as a second, but if the applicant wishes to have a straight up thumbs up or thumbs down vote, I'd gladly amend my motion to deny his request and leave it at that.
It's up to you. I mean, you made the motion to table and we have a second to table.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, this is Beckelheimer. I think the tabling is appropriate, and I think this is one of this item is significant enough where it should generate a workshop. We want to see that North Laredo master plan. We want to see what the Bayasio is going to look like. What are these road expansions that the city's proposing, and then how are they going to be handling the tractor trailer parking that I brought up at the very beginning that Mr. Duenas is also concerned about?
Okay.
I agree with Commissioner Beckelheimer, but apparently the applicant wants a thumbs up or thumbs down, but if that's what he wants, I'm willing to table it to give him time to complete his application.
Commissioner Beckelheimer, why is this particular development is being tabled for what's going to be happening on Bayasio? It's moving forward and it's going to provide the relief that is needed in the area, but why are you want to hold back development for something that we don't have control of?
Well, it isn't my motion. I'm merely supporting the fact that it would be better to table than to deny it.
The commission as a whole.
I don't know. Can you hear me respond to you? I don't know. Is he able to hear me?
Commissioner, I just asked for a vote on the motion to table.
All right. We have a call for the question on a motion to table. Anybody who wishes to vote against not tabling the item?
I will vote against not tabling the item.
We have one commissioner who's voting against. All right, anybody else? If not, the motion to table carries. All right, table. All right, next item that we have is the consideration of the following preliminary plats and preliminary replats. A preliminary consideration of the plat of the Killam Industrial Park Unit 27, the intent is industrial.
Rafa, you are muted.
Yes, next slide, please. The applicant is Killam Development Limited, Killam Ranch Properties. The engineering, SEC Engineering, 37.31 acre tract of land located east of F1472 and north of Killam Industrial Boulevard. The zoning is M1. The proposed use is industrial, and the proposed lots are 6. This is the general location map, aerial view, street view, and the proposed plat.
So this is a phase of the previous. This is a phase of the previous master plan they just tabled.
That is correct. This ties back to the master plan.
Okay, so with that being tabled, this one would necessarily also have to be tabled as well.
Correct.
Okay.
It is a motion.
All right.
Motion to table with the same conditions of the previous item.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Okay, Matt Vice.
Vice seconds. Those who wish to vote against the motion that was made. With none heard, then the motion is approved to table.
Mr. Chairman, one comment though. The time uncertain tabling is a little unnerving, I would say, if I was the developer. So Kirby, can you prioritize something with the city engineer and traffic to see what you can get to us as a workshop perhaps?
Time certain means that the planning commission designates the time, typically the next meeting. Time uncertain just means when the applicant's ready to put it back on, and we make sure that any stipulation that the commission put on that is met. So in this case, it's that they complete that traffic impact study and they have all the information available so that you can look at more detail. And so yes, we're going to prioritize.
Well, a chunk of that information is available, which is what the engineer was trying to say. It just needs to be given to us in a setting, preferably not on live TV or on a workshop. I can't stress that phrase enough. It's a it's a great setting to study things without a commitment to vote either way. It's a learning opportunity for all of us. So I'm just saying we should have a workshop on it and inform ourselves and not wait. Let's just say they bring it back for the next meeting. I mean, there's no need for an uncomfortable another round of tabling, and we haven't done anything, is all I'm saying. You could make a priority for it, please.
All right. Point well taken. I do have to make one comment. I just got a text from Commissioner Dominguez. He lost signal and he can't get back into the meeting. Kirby, I don't know if we can do anything there.
If I see him request, I'll let him in, but there is no pending room, and he just has to join and he's back in.
Okay. All right. Moving now to the next items. Preliminary consideration of the replat of lot 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, block 1679, Eastern Division into lot 8A, block 1679. The intent is commercial.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, we did receive a request for table. I believe Mr. Seidemann has additional details on this item.
All right.
Yes, the request was that this item be tabled time certain for the next meeting. However, I think this is the third or fourth time that we've tabled it time certain. I think it would make more sense to table this time uncertain. And then when the applicant is ready, we put it back on the agenda rather than just planning to put it on the next meeting, given that this is the third or fourth time that we've done this.
Okay.
They're working out some things with TxDOT, and when it's clear they've worked those out, when the applicant wants to put this back on, we'll schedule it. So,
right, so then we need
the motion is to table uncertain.
All right. Need a motion from the commission?
Ayers makes a motion to table for time uncertain.
Beckelheimer, second.
We have a motion and a second. All those who wish to vote against the motion? Motion carries. Tabled. Next item, preliminary consideration of the plat of Cuatro Vientos Sur subdivision, phase 7. The intent is residential.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Applicant is 4B Holdings Limited. The engineer of record is Porras Nance Engineering. 11.19 acre tract of land located west of Cuatro Vientos Road and north of Lapito Magana Road. The zoning is R1A. Proposed use is residential, and the proposed number of lots is 58. General location map. Aerial view. Street view, and staff comments from planning, water utilities, traffic safety, and the proposed motion.
Can you put back the comments from planning? Okay.
Yes, item number 1.
Yeah, item number 1. That's the one that I guess, do you have the engineer by any chance on the line?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman. Wayne, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Wayne Nance with Porras Engineering. The same comment we had with the master plan, we're going to be working with the planning department to address item number 1. All the comments we completely concur with. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Does anybody in the commission have any questions for Mr. Nance? No questions being heard. What are the wishes of the commission?
Beckelheimer makes a motion to recommend approval or to approve.
Second, Ugalde.
Second by Ugalde. Anybody who wishes to vote against the motion? None heard. Motion carries. Next item. Preliminary consideration of the plat of Port Grande subdivision phase 2, unit 2. Intent is industrial.
I believe you might have missed one, Commissioner.
I'm sorry.
Item 7D.
Item 7D. I thought we just did that one. All right, you're right. Item 7. Preliminary consideration of the replat of lot 1, block 13, and lot 11, 12, and 13, block 15. College Heights subdivision, unit 3 into lot 1A, 1B, 1C, block 13, and lots 1, 11A, 12A, 13A, 13B, 13C, 13D, and block 15, College Heights subdivision. The intent is residential.
Mr. Chairman, we did receive a request from the applicant to have this item tabled time certain.
All right. We have a motion from the commission.
Beckelhammer moves to table time certain.
Second advice.
By that advice, all those who wish to speak, who wish to vote against, the item is tabled. Next item is preliminary consideration of the plat of the Puerto Grande subdivision, Phase 2, Unit 2. The intent is industrial.
Mr. Chairman, on this item, again, we did receive a request to have this item tabled time uncertain.
All right, can we have a motion to table the item? Uncertain.
Motion to table advice.
Motion to table uncertain? Time
Uncertain.
All right, second by?
Beckelhammer.
By Beckelhammer. Anybody who wishes to vote against the item, the motion? Motion carries the table. The next item is a preliminary consideration of the replat of Lot 3, Block 5, Riverside subdivision into Lot 3A and Lot 3B. Block 5, Riverside subdivision. The intent is multifamily residential.
Yes, sir. The applicant is Janet Carrillo. The engineer of record is Civil Engineering Consultants. 0.86 acre tract of land located west of US 83 Zapata Highway and south of Masterson Road. The zoning is R3. The proposed use is multifamily residential, and it is the proposed lot number of lots is 2. This is the general location map, aerial view, street view, and the proposed plat.
Okay.
The comments from planning, engineering, and water utilities, and the proposed motion.
All right. Okay. Do we have an engineer or anybody who wants to speak on it on the phone?
Mr. Chairman, we have Jaime Garcia from CEC on the phone. Jaime, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. This is Jaime Garcia with CEC. We concur with the comments. I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay. Does anybody in the commission have any questions for Mr. Garcia? No questions heard. What are the wishes of the commission?
Beckelhammer moves to approve this item.
Second, Dueñas.
Second by Dueñas. Anybody who wishes to vote against the motion? Against the motion? None heard. Motion carries. Next item is a preliminary consideration of the Fito Santos plat. The intent is commercial.
The applicant is Arnulfo Santos Jr., engineer of record, Guerra Engineering, 1.9 acre tract of land located north of Shiloh Drive and southwest of Springfield Avenue. The zoning is B3. The proposed use is commercial, and the proposed number of lots is 2. General location, aerial view, street view, and the proposed plat. Comments from planning, engineering, environmental, and water utilities, and traffic safety.
Can you go back to your comments from planning? Let me ask you a quick question here. Your number one comment, access from a dedicated, fully improved roadway is required. The way I see these lots, and you can correct me if I am wrong, but I am seeing that these lots front the particular city right of way, which is the extension of Springfield. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Well, no, that is not correct. It's not currently constructed. There's right.
I understand it. What I was saying is they front a city of Laredo right of way.
Well, it's property that's owned by the city, but
Right.
and the use of it will be right of way, but currently is right of way. Yes.
It is right of way that the city of Laredo owns for the extension of Springfield. All right. Do you have the engineer on the line by any chance?
We sure do, Chairman. Fred Guerra. Fred, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, good evening, Fred Gavin. Yeah, the owner, he's aware, it's, I'm not sure if it's when it's going to be paid, but Yeah, I'm made him aware that, that it'll be his responsibility to pay this portion, his frontage.
Okay.
On that, if he wants to get platted, because he will need legal access, to his two lots.
Right, and that's what I wanted to make sure that everybody understood, that the owner who is platting this property will be required to pave the half of that street, which is, the requirement of the ordinance. And he is aware of it then, Fred, so you're aware of that is a requirement.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and you're okay with that?
Yeah, oh, yeah, definitely. That's part of the planning.
Yeah.
Make that decision, in the next few months, if he wants to proceed or just, wait it out, I guess, whatever. If they ever do end up paving it, because I understand that they're working on the plans. I believe Gilpin Engineering was working on the plans from that point all the way to the Mary Help of Christians line decker area.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were clear that, yes, the applicant or the owner of the property would be required to pave half of that street if for whatever reason the city did not
correct
right away, or in the near future, not right away, in the near future. All right. Does anybody on the commission have any questions for Mr. Guerra?
Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Guerra, that this right-of-way land that we are referring to, was this property dedicated over to the city by the property owner of these two lots?
No, you mean for the right-of-way?
Yes. Is the right-of-way land any way associated with your plant?
Yeah. Okay. Repeat the question.
I'm just curious. Did the city of Laredo acquire this land from your applicant, the right-of-way land?
Commissioner Bockelheimer, a portion of that right of way was dedicated by a property owner in 2011, but not the entire right of way.
Oh, okay. And just so that we're all understanding that this is going to be a substitute for McPherson, so it's not going to be a light construction of, I'm not an engineer, but whatever you call the quality level of asphalt, caliche, and all that.
Right. No, this is a 120-foot right of way. So you're talking about what, 60 back to back or something similar?
Yes, 65 or 60.
64 back to back. Is that right, Dan? Is that what you're requiring?
Ramon, can you
Ramon?
Can you speak to the design for Springfield at this portion? Chavez, you're muted.
Sí, perdón, Chairman. A mí sí me gustaría escuchar a Kerry, porque tengo entendido que hay un trazo para Springfield, para Springfield hasta el Loop 20 propuesto por Dr. Marte. Entonces me gustaría escuchar a Kirby qué proyecto, qué plan existe en Springfield. Thank you.
Okay. A ver, Ramón Chávez.
Mr. Chavez, are you there?
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to over here get my screen. If I can share my screen, I can show a schematic of the 65 back-to-back proposed roadway. Give me 1 second, please.
Well, I'm not sure the commissioners are asking to see a diagram just yet. They just wanted to know that.
Okay, it's 65 back-to-back, if that's a question.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
That's it. 65 back.
Danny McKee, I'd like to make a comment if possible.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Dan.
I'm going to make myself look bad, but this is one I'm not familiar with. Didn't look into it, but I guess maybe the question is more for Kirby and Ramon. If this is the Springfield extension, are we going to be allowing these type of lot connections up and down the street? I thought we were going to just limit it to major connections, major street connections. I could be wrong.
Great question.
Well, you do need to give them access, I mean, to the property, so it could be a shared access on those two lots. I don't know. Kirby?
Yes, access is determined after preliminary and before final when commercial plans are submitted. And so they're not typically, not that they can't be addressed now at the preliminary plat phase, but they're not typically addressed at the preliminary plat phase. They're addressed when they have plans, building plans about what they're going to put there. And so that would be the recommendation. A shared access would be preferred over two separate accesses.
Okay, all right. Gentlemen, does anybody else have any questions on the plat?
Well, just along the lines of what the traffic engineer just brought up, and we're not talking about denying anybody their property rights, but there's been a lot of work put into the Springfield Extension Project, and for Mr. Dueñas's benefit, it's from Del Mar Boulevard all the way to Loop 20. And, you know, we just need to be intelligent about it the whole way, that we're not creating a problem for ourselves after we get the funding in order and launch construction, and then we have to have streets popping out in an inappropriate interval. I'm saying it would happen. I don't understand these things to that degree. I just want somebody from the city to say that that's not going to happen.
Well, the right of way right now in Springfield is set. I mean, right there in front of that property that we're discussing right now. Okay, that right of way is already there. City owns that. If this applicant wishes to do something prior to the city being ready to build that street, he is responsible for half of the construction of that street. Okay, so he can get his plat approved.
Right. But my point is, Mr. Chairman, is that without being totally familiar with that section that we're talking about, since it's very back anyway, it's that it's not, it's going to be McPherson-like. It's going to have.
Yes. I mean, it's got to be a reliever to McPherson is really what we're looking at here for Springfield. Yes. Yeah, that's what it is. Yes.
Okay, that was on my.
Yeah, that's, I mean, and it's all subject to, I guess, funding availability by the city as to which portion, if not all of it, can be done at the same time. It just depends on what funding they got and where they're going to start. I mean, the logical start would probably be Linedecker property and move it up north. At least you can connect International and maybe get all the way to Shiloh, but it's no telling based on funding. But yes, that is a reliever. All right, gentlemen, what are the wishes of the commission on this particular plat? Does anybody have any?
I have a question before we motion.
All right.
So just an observation. So are we all the city now observing the 2020 flood maps? How close is that in the floodplain? All those two lots? I guess a two-part question.
So you can see the environmental comments are to address any stormwater detention requirements. We do look at floodplain, and so if it was in the floodplain.
Yeah, that's stormwater, but I'm talking about floodplain. FEMA.
Well, if it is in the floodplain, Raul, anything that's going to be built there has to be above floodplain. I believe it's 24 inches.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Ramon Chavez, city engineer. There's a large portion of this within the floodplain, but up there, I don't see it being with it. But there's a large portion that is within the floodplain.
And we're looking at the 2010 or 2020, because didn't the 2020 come in already, the maps?
Yeah, we're looking at the latest.
Okay, just want to make sure that there's a note or a disclaimer that the plat is in the floodplain.
Okay, all right. So
I want to drag this out, but here's my last comment because
okay,
looking at it from a these things don't necessarily come natural to me, but I see this little road, and I understand that that's a dirt road that people use. That belongs to the Resendez family. Does that sound correct, Ramon? This little road.
Yes, sir, Commissioner.
Okay, so here's my concern in that if you divvy up these two lots, is that road adequate? If it's acquired, is that the space in that section would be adequate for a real road to connect to Springfield? Because how are they going to get access to Springfield is my point. So if we allow certain platting, doesn't that force us to fulfill some obligations? And then it could injure our plans for the flow of Springfield?
Well, we have the properties. They're owned by the city already. So
They would have to construct.
You're talking about the overall construction in general, and that's something that has not been determined yet.
Okay, you're not concerned about this then?
Again, we own the right of way already. So this project is moving forward. The access that planning is talking about, that's a separate thing.
That's what I'm referring to, is the access to the right of way, the entire Springfield Road from beginning to end. Again, is there some since it doesn't exist, what is the benefit to plat this now? Is it just in preparation for something from 2 or 3 years down the road, or does this somehow bind us in some way from the function of entire Springfield, not just this right-of-way part, all of it?
The answer to that, George, is no.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
It doesn't. I mean, if the applicant wishes to go forth with his 2 lots, then, and this particular street is not, let's say, designed or built, and he wants to get a plat recorded to sell property, he would have to build that particular portion in front of his property according to the specs that the city would give him for that Springfield Street. That's what the way it would have to work. But he would only be responsible for half of that street.
Okay. That's correct.
Because he's in front, the only portion is half of that is in front of his property. But that's the way it would work. Now, if you look at those things and they do a cost analysis on these things, it may end up that they say, you know what, we might as well just wait, or, that's a decision by the property owner. It's not something that we can decide for them at this point. Or we can bring up we brought up the concerns, and I think the engineer has heard everything else, and then, he knows what it would take to get this plat accomplished. With that being said, gentlemen, what do we want to do with this plat?
Make a motion to approve Zugalde.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Dueñas.
Second from Dueñas. Does anybody wish to vote against the motion? Against the motion? If not, the motion carries. Thank you. The next item, preliminary consideration of the replat of Lot 1, Block 2, Delmar Junction plat into Lots 1A and 1B, Block 2, Delmar Junction replat. The intent is commercial.
The applicant is BBVA USA. The engineer of record is Guerra Engineering. It's a 4-acre tract of land located south of Delmar Boulevard and east of Junction Drive. The zoning is B4, the proposed use is commercial, and the proposed number of lots is 2. General location map, aerial view, street view, the proposed plat. Comments from planning and engineering, water and utilities, and the proposed motion.
All right. Do we have the engineer of record on the line?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman. Fred Guerra's on the phone. Fred, are you there?
Yes. Yep.
Fred, do you concur with all the comments?
Yeah, I saw the comments, yes, no problem. We agree.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Fred Guerra? All right. Well, no questions heard. What are the wishes of the commission?
I'll make a motion to approve subject to the following comments and advice.
All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Ugalde.
A second by Ugalde. Does anybody wish to vote against the particular motion? Against? None heard. Motion carries. It's approved. The next item is a reconsideration of the following preliminary plats and preliminary replats. Preliminary consideration of the plat of Concord Park subdivision. The intent is residential.
The applicant is JBS Concord LLC. The engineer of record is Crane Engineering. It's 3.74 acre tract of land located east of Concord Hill Boulevard and south of Gage Avenue. The zoning is B1. The proposed use is multifamily residential, and the proposed number of lots is 1. General location, aerial view, street view, the proposed plat. Comments from planning, water and utilities, continued, and traffic safety. And the proposed motion.
Okay. Do we have the engineer of record on the line?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair. I have Eddie Garza from Crane Engineering. Eddie, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic.
Go ahead. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Edward Garza here from Crane Engineering on behalf of the developer. This preliminary plat, this is the second time we come to you now. This has been quite a challenge for us with the topography in this area. You know, we have reviewed the comments. We agree with the comments, but except for planning comment number 1 and traffic comment number 1 pertaining to access, we did have some discussion with Danny McGee today. Our objective here is to develop a multifamily development now on one large lot. We're still working on a site plan for this because we have so much topo to deal with, and we understand that's part of the challenge with working out access. We did submit a conceptual access plan for review that proposed a right-in, right-out driveway along Concord. Concord Hills, as you know, is a 80-foot major collector, so we understand the limitations that access from there has to have. It's a primary collector for this part of the city. Gage Avenue to the north is a 60-foot right-of-way local collector. So right now, traffic is recommending an access there. Our conceptual plan was to request up to 3 access points based on the City of Laredo driveway spacing code. And so in our discussions with Danny, I know he's on the meeting, we talked about working together in terms of developing a site plan that will be conducive to some form of adequate access. As you know, what I've seen here in Laredo lately with multifamily is we're seeing larger densities on multifamilies. And so I think it would be important that we're able to have somewhere between at least 2 to 3 type of access points, especially trying to work this out. So I'll defer now to Danny if he wants to add any comment to that.
Mr. Chairman, Danny McGee for the record. I did speak to Mr. Garza today, and we will try and work with him. As a last resort, we can possibly look at access to Concord Hills, but that will have to be as last resort. He quoted some problems with the topography, the terrain out there, and if he can show, I guess, the city that he's down to that last resort, then we can possibly look at that. But we would prefer to keep the access all through Gage, all that area. None of the properties access directly to Concord Hills, and we don't want to set a precedent unless we absolutely have to.
Very good. Thank you for your comments, Danny. All right. Does anybody in the commission have any questions for Mr. Garza or Mr. McGee?
Well, for Mr. Garza, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Eddie, what's so terribly wrong about following that plan about Gage?
So can you repeat the question?
What is so terribly wrong about all access going through Gage?
My concern about just trying to request a one access point of Concord Hills was because the development of that road to allow vehicles traveling north on Concord Hills would have the ability just to turn right into this future development. Concord will serve as the primary access point. Gage will serve as the primary, and that's its function as a local collector. But I think just from the standpoint of fire protection, fire access, I think when you have land of this amount of land available for multifamily, I think it just makes sense to have some additional forms of access. So I just didn't want to lose that opportunity to have an access once I'm able to submit a site plan to the city and get something more concrete on that.
I see. Mr. Chairman, what are your thoughts?
I think we should let Eddie and Dan McGee work it out. They're, both good engineers, and I'm sure they'll come up with the best plan available for the community. So I think, that's what I would recommend.
Just to, if I could add something, Mr. Beckelheimer, I did tell Mr. Garza that he needs to show me why he needs it, not why he wants it.
That's right. Anyway, this is not to go back to it, this is my concern about the Springfield thing, is that we set up something where somebody needs to cut into the street and it's not really part of the plan. But anyway, I'm good with that. I'll make the motion to respect the negotiations between our traffic engineer and Mr. Garza, and that they come up with the best plan possible.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. We have a second.
Second, advice.
Second from advice. Does anybody want to vote against the motion? Against the motion? None heard. The motion carries. It's approved. Next item, preliminary, is consideration of the following preliminary final plats. We have preliminary and final consideration of the replat of Lot 26, Block 1, San Isidro Northeast Subdivision, Phase 4, into Lot 26A and 26B, Block 1, San Isidro Northeast Subdivision, Phase 4. Intent is commercial.
The applicant is San Isidro Northeast Limited. The engineer is Slay Engineering. 5.06 acre tract of land located east of International Boulevard and north of Simon Bolivar Boulevard. The zoning is B1. The proposed use is commercial, and the proposed number of lots is 2. General location. Aerial view. Street view. Proposed plat. And the proposed motion on this item.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Beckelheimer, second.
Ordonez.
All right. Wish to vote against the motion to approve? None heard. Motion carries. We're going into item number 10, and I believe number 10 and number 11, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me, Kirby. These are all final approvals. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So we can have a motion to hear all of these together.
So move. I'll make a motion to hear them all together, 10 and 11.
Second, Beckelheimer.
And a second from Beckelheimer. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, can I have a motion now?
So move. Motion to approve items 10 and 11. Ugalde.
Second, Beckelheimer.
And a second from Beckelheimer. Those who wish to vote against the motion, motion carries. All right. Director's comments?
Yes, sir. Just have a couple things wanted to discuss with you. One, we mentioned before that we want to start doing zoning cases on each cycle, and after talking with staff, or excuse me, at each planning commission meeting. The reason we wanted to do that was because it wouldn't increase the number of zoning cases, but it would mean that we don't have one meeting that goes very long and one meeting that's really short. It would even that out. So it would make one meeting less long, which is good. It would also, for the applicant, it would mean if they missed a deadline for a zoning case, they don't wait a month. They could just wait a couple weeks. And so we look at it as a win for everybody. Now, the issue is that before, with the way things were organized, it was very difficult to try to do two zoning case cycles a month, given all the deadlines and everything that has to be noticed. But because of all the effort we've been doing to get organized and get digitized and going online, and if you remember, I showed you the status update application sheet that really allows us to track these well and gives the applicant information they can check themselves. We're at a point we feel, and staff has agreed, that at the new fiscal year starting in October, that we would be ready to start hearing zoning cases every month. Now I would only do that if the commission agrees. to this, but I think the benefits are there for everybody, and including the commission won't have one long meeting. What are your all's thoughts on that? We don't need a motion, but I would just like your feedback to make sure that you agree.
Kirby, let me go ahead and share something with you. I've always been a proponent of having zoning cases come up, at every meeting. I know that it was a logistical nightmare based on staffing in the past. I think you've done a very good job of staffing up and of streamlining some of the processes, where to me, it makes perfect sense to allow the citizens who need to conduct business to be able to conduct business in a timely manner. That's my comment.
Anybody else have any comments on that?
For the record, I was able to reconnect, Mr. Chairman. Please set it on record. I was pulled out of the, I got disconnected and I couldn't connect back, but I'm back. Okay.
Great.
I wanted just to comment that I agree that if we can streamline it and get more cases done quicker, that way we should. I agree with what Mr. Chairman Vidal said.
I agree with
Yo estoy de acuerdo en que sea lo más seguido que se pueda hasta que veamos que los casos bajen. Ahorita mandamos casos al table y cualquier cosa se alargaría mucho de ser cada mes. Entonces, seguir con la frecuencia que tengamos más pronto hasta que veamos que los casos bajen, entonces reprogramarlo. Y también continuar con la transmisión en Webex, porque a mí me dio COVID y si no hubiera tenido síntomas, pues hubiera perjudicado a varios comisionados, ¿verdad? Entonces, tratar de seguir en online. Gracias. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. The one caveat I will say is if we try this and we find that those logistical challenges are still there, then we might have to go back to one zoning cycle per month. But we're going to give it our best, and staff was in agreement that we should try to be better for everybody, especially for the applicant, for residents. We want to provide good service, timely service. So we will give it a shot.
Perfect.
Now, y'all wanted to discuss a little bit about recommendations for improving how we could handle this meeting. Did you have some ideas, Commissioner Beckelheimer?
I do. Kirby, George, can I jump in real fast?
No, go ahead, Carlos, of course.
In the 409th, what they do is they send the litigants the Zoom link. So here it would be whatever's the invite link to people who have business before the commission on the day that we're having our meeting. But then they also have it set up on their website so that if there's anybody who wants to make a public comment who maybe decides that day that they're going to participate, they can go onto the website and click on there directly. That's how the 409th, the 406 does it, and it seems like it works pretty well.
If I can, I'll share that we provide multiple ways. Right now, the city council is just they take comments submitted that they read. What we've been doing is we take those comments as well. Somebody gets a notice in the mail. They're provided multiple ways they can get in contact with us. They can email us their comments. They can also go online and they can submit their comments online, and there they can also receive a form that they could mail in. So they could do all those things. In addition, we provide them with the meeting time where we provide a call-in, which is something where we go above and beyond. Now, there are some issues with our technology here where we're not able to queue up phone calls because of the way that phone calls are handled during the day. They roll so that if somebody else, if somebody's on the phone, it rolls to the next person. So taking multiple phone calls is a challenge for us. Now I can look into try to see what technology we could use to queue that.
Kirby, but hold on, let me say this.
Yeah. I want to address your point though. We use WebEx for these meetings, and as you can see, there have been challenges in the past when we're not able to mute somebody, and when multiple people stay in. Multiple people are in a meeting and not muting themselves. When potentially, if we give this meeting invite out to everybody to be able to join in, we're talking about potentially dozens more individuals that are going to be in here that that we have to manually mute, but they can always unmute themselves. And it really can degrade the audio quality, which is not only important for y'all to hear each other, but that this meeting is being broadcast on Swagit can make it extremely difficult for the broadcast as well.
Kirby,
People to
but
hear.
okay, but let me say this to you. I think none of those reasons are legitimate reasons, and no offense to you, but it's like the 406 will have on any given day 30, 40 attorneys all on calling in. They have someone who's dedicated to managing the audio of everybody and looking at the agenda item that's or the court item that's going to come up, and then unmuting the people that are going to be next in line or next to discuss the issue. And they also broadcast their court sessions live on YouTube. They're required to under the Public Information Act to do that. So just because City Council does it a certain way doesn't mean that it's the right way. I have a lot of issues with what City Council does, and so I think that to have a very transparent process that allows not only the engineers to participate and engage one-on-one with us, but also allows citizens who have, some item before like, for instance, I'll give you an example. And I've recused myself on all of these types of examples, but like the people that have been objecting to the stuff in the Mueller property. I mean, you have like 30, 40 people who will come in and they'll care about that. And so this process that we have is not is not useful for them, doesn't allow us to engage with them in a meaningful way. So I think that courts who have a lot of litigants and have live witnesses and have witnesses testifying under oath can do it. I think something like a planning and zoning commission meeting, it's like a piece of cake.
Carlos, let me ask you a quick question, Carlos.
Mr. Commissioner,
on the court, do you use WebEx or Zoom? Or
we
what?
Use Zoom. We use Zoom.
And that's where I was, to me, I think Zoom is probably an easier mechanism for these type of meetings.
But I think it's essentially the same technology. They have the ability to operate that. Yeah.
If
they have the same.
Somebody who's more proactive that allows people to speak for their 3 minutes and then terminates their communication, you can allow them where Commissioner Flores is saying, if they come up beforehand saying, I want to speak about this issue, a more proactive moderator can handle that and allow them to say their piece.
Yeah. Kirby, I think it's something that you need to look into, see if we can, do a little bit better on actually the people who we need to listen to and who want to speak to the commissioners.
I think there's plenty of platforms. I mean, Zoom, Microsoft Team. I mean, just find the correct platform, and I'm sure we're not the only ones doing this. So the entire country, entire world is doing this. So there's a lot of. I'm Googling right now information. There's a whole bunch of articles on different platforms and what cities are doing to go virtual.
All right, we will look into it. Just so you know, we have been consulting with several other jurisdictions, seeing what they're doing, trying to do this the best. A lot of thought and effort has been going to these to try to make them run smoothly but balance the different challenges that we have. But we'll look into this. We'll look into Zoom and I mean, it's certainly worth a try. Maybe we can try one meeting, see how it goes. If y'all like how it goes, we can continue, or if not, we can come back to the old way. So we'll look into it.
Very good.
Yes,
sir.
I have a question. ¿Ha existido alguna inconformidad o queja de los aplicantes de cómo estamos caminando el sistema, cómo estamos llevando el sistema? ¿Hay alguna queja o inconformidad?
Kirby, has there been any complaints on the way we've been running the meetings?
No, I haven't received any. Staff, has anyone else, have any of y'all received any complaints?
Entonces creo que podemos seguir trabajando como venimos caminando hasta ahora, porque controlar los micrófonos de la gente es un poco complicado, cortarlos. Creo que si estamos trabajando bien, si está funcionando bien, lo podemos dejar así. Gracias.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I have a request from staff.
Yes.
When I understand that our packets become quite voluminous when emailing them via PDF every week because of the size, and we're trying to save paper. But when it deals with an important issue like the Ruthinger Road project that we were talking about earlier, it would be nice if we get any links to external information that has already been done on a project so that we can look at it ahead of time instead of in the middle of the process that we're told that their studies have been done ahead of time and we haven't had access to those studies. And I would just ask that we get not just the PDF packet, but any external links to any other documents that we can review ahead of time to be better prepared for these meetings.
Yes, sir, we'll do our best. Commissioner Tellez, I apologize you didn't get that information. We didn't get that to y'all, and or we didn't think to get it to y'all. I did send a link, by the way. Everybody's got an email link to the RMA webpage, and they've got all their studies up. So if you're interested in more of what they do, you can check it out. And like I said, I apologize. We will do a better job in the future of getting relevant information to you when it has something to do with the plat that's before you or a zone case.
No, and this is not like something that's been a continuing issue. This is a one-time issue just because of this. But it would be not like it. I get the frustration from the engineer. There was more information that was needed, but it would be nice to know the information that was available to us ahead of time. But I appreciate staff's work.
Thank you. We'll do a better job.
All right.
My only comment is remember, Kirby, whether they're on the phone or on Zoom, it's only three people who can speak for and three people can speak against any item. So somebody brought up the moderator thing. You just moderate that, say, that's it, this is the third person. It's not 10 people, it's not 4, it's 3. You know, and they're limited to 3 minutes.
Yes.
That's it.
The discussion time.
Yes.
All right, anything else? If not, motion to adjourn?
Hayes, motion to adjourn.
Beckelheimer, second.
Those who are not in favor of the motion?
God bless everybody.
Thank you all very much. That was a good meeting.
Everybody have a great weekend. Be
Yes, sir.
safe.